You're listening to the Trip of Change podcast, the Jackie Robinson Show. I'm Jackie Robinson. This podcast focuses on women in business, travel, tech tips, wise boomer chicks, because we know stuff, hot topics in the news. We stream live weekly on Facebook and YouTube. Let's start the show. Hello, and welcome once again to the Trip of Change podcast, the Jackie Robinson Show. I'm Jackie Robinson, and I have to tell you, I have a very special guest with me this evening. But before I get to her, let me take care of some administrative stuff as we always do here on the Trip of Change podcast show. And what I want to do is talk again about our sponsor, which is Healthful Essence, a vegan vegetarian restaurant here in Atlanta at 875 York. And I'm telling you, they have some of the best vegan vegetarian dishes. There are people who come from all over the world to take part in the food that's offered at Healthful Essence here in Atlanta. So shout out to Quadro and Princess over there at Healthful Essence. Thank you so much for your continued support. And for those of you who would like to get a discount, if you order online through the Clover app, that's the Clover app, you can get a discount over at Healthful Essence. So thank you once again, Healthful Essence. We appreciate you. Yes. And so also I want to talk about, some of the things that I've been doing here lately. And that is, I've been working on a very major website for an organization that deals with retirees and their pensions and their Social Security and Medicare. And so I'll be sharing some additional information about that later on. But yeah, your girl has been in the Jack Cave working, okay? I've been working. I've been doing a lot of work. So with that being said, I want to also encourage you all to go out to the Trip of Change website here, where we have our podcast. And this evening we are featuring Miss Christy Nichols, and also the story about Macy Gray, because she's been hot and in the news. And I want to also talk about some self-improvement or some cards that you can use. It's stories that I tell about my life that are uplifting. I made them into these cards, and you can go out to the website there and download them. They're free. They don't cost anything. And so I encourage you to go out there and just click on one, and it'll take you to the page that has the information about that particular one. Keep going, never give up. And then at the bottom, you'll see a link for you to be able to download the card. It's real free. Just go out to the website. There it is, and just cut it, and you can put it on your refrigerator or you can frame it. But hopefully it's information that you will find that's helpful to you. Yes. And so those are things that we are doing here at Trip of Change. And so I want to go ahead and introduce our guest this evening, Miss Christy Nichols. And so let me bring her on in out of the green room and into the studio. Hello there.
Hi there, Jackie.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
Good. And I am excited to say that you are visiting here with me all the way from Nicaragua. Okay. And if anybody is familiar with some history about Nicaragua, some of us old timers might question, girl, what you doing in Nicaragua? Okay. But I'm sure things have changed as time changes, things change, and there you are in Nicaragua. So welcome and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me about yourself. I mean, kind of walk us through your background, how you grew up and how you came to feeling some of the things that you feel that have to do with the inner man and the spirituality and connectivity to the community and the courage to travel the world and spread joy and spread love.
All of it. Okay. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was raised in the South. I'm from Tennessee originally. But then halfway through childhood, grew up in California. So Southern roots, but West Coast education, I guess. But then in my 20s, I moved to England for, I guess, about 4 months. Are you still there? Oop, I think I lost you.
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah, no, I grew up in the South and then the West Coast. And then in my 20s, I spent living in the UK, which meant, Europe on your doorstep, everything's so accessible over there. And then after about 7 years there, I was teaching. I had a teaching job, teaching secondary school. And I don't know, I just started my travels, I guess, at that stage.
Okay, but okay, let back up a
Yeah.
second for me because you were in Nashville,
Mhm.
right? And then you went to college. Where'd you go to college?
My undergrad was at Cal State in Southern California.
Okay, you went to California.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been quite a difference from going from the what was that Midwest to the West.
Yeah. Well, I was 9 or 10 when we moved, but like
Oh, okay.
yeah, but your childhood memories are, rolling hills and neighbors without fences and, the brick houses and kind of, the porch culture is what I like. People sitting on the porches talking to your neighbor, borrowing,
Okay.
that's how that framed a lot of my childhood. Well, I think my whole perspective on life, very neighborly. I've always appreciated living in a community where everybody kind of knows everybody else and it's just very friendly. And you don't really get that in California, So I'm grateful actually that I had Southern upbringing, even though, I grew up like in California the rest of my childhood years.
So you got a mix of both.
Oh gosh, yeah, yes,
Okay.
a huge mix, and it continues to be so.
So you went from the United States.
Hmm.
Was that your first international trip,
To
or
the
had you
UK.
to the UK, or had you traveled while you were in college?
No, I mean, we crossed the border in San Diego into Tijuana a couple times, but like, that's not for me.
Yeah. I've been to Tijuana.
No, I wouldn't call that a crazy international travel. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
my first time on my own. Like I joined a Canadian university that had a 4-month program, and that was my first, big experience. Just, I didn't want to travel just to go on vacation and take photos. I wanted to like live somewhere and just get a real taste of what just like the day to day was, and all little things that happen that are spectacular and memorable, but are not on your itinerary. Like I wanted to do the itinerary type things and the landmarks, but I just wanted to hang out. And so that's why I went for 4 months. And that 4 months turned into 7 years.
Okay.
I just kept
So
staying.
kind of like off the beaten path, because of course tourists have an itinerary
Mhm.
that's either prepared to them for them through an agent or some travel book that they've looked at or they've perused online. But I'm like you, I kind of like to find things that are not, touristy so to
Mhm.
speak, and you can find some of the most amazing off the beaten path types of things. And so for you, it was more than just a week vacation, 2 week vacation. It was, I'm going to live here.
Yeah, I wanted to live there, and I just understand things about how life was, and I have always been that way, and that's why, like I joke, I'm a serial expat. Like I live in Nicaragua, but I lived in Australia in between England and like I haven't actually lived in the States in about 20 years. I just keep on living out here, just seeing what the world has to offer.
Well, and that's interesting because with the climate the way that it is in the United States and maybe in some other countries, not only retirees are looking to become expats, but there
Yep.
are, Gen X, Y's, and Z's. They're also looking at it the same way. So, did you have like any mentors or any influencers? Like I mean, was there some type of spiritual epiphany, or I mean, how did you come to feel like you had more to offer than just getting a corporate job?
Oh God, because once I started to do the things that were pulling at my soul, things that I really felt drawn to. My trip to England wasn't planned, packed, go. I actually had to delay it. There was like things that weren't working out at the time for me to be able to travel. So I really worked hard to go, and it was just part of what like I couldn't shake it. You can't ignore this feeling about just really wanting to experience something. And once I got that taste,
Yes, yes,
like
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
But I think too, Christy, a lot of times we have that innate feeling, that feeling of wanting to let our spirit run free, if that's the type of spirit that we have, but we're constrained sometimes, whether it's financial or fear or doubt or naysayers, and so again, it takes a lot of courage to say, you know what, I'm gonna step out on faith,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna do this. And so with your college education, and I guess um the desire,
Hmm.
you went to UK first and then Australia.
That's right.
So you talk about in your bio, your information about education, being an instructor. I know that there are a lot of people who look at getting, is it the TSLA, some type of online teacher certificate to be able to teach English in foreign countries, as part of being an expat if they had to find a way to make a living. But that's not something that you had to do. But can you speak on that at all?
Yeah, so my first company I started in Australia was education through travel, and many of my students who came through it, just these types of experiences just open their eyes to what is possible in the world, and one of their avenues to living overseas, to immersing in an entirely new culture that's not always like exciting. Sometimes it's scary and rough, but all of these experiences that shape us and help us grow. And that it was a TESOL, which I think is what you're referring to, the TEFL. That's a starting point. And I would have said back maybe 5 or 6 years ago that was, a really big ticket into living overseas and working, teaching English, because anybody can do it. You don't need a degree in English at all. But I feel like nowadays anybody can work online. They even have visas for people for nomads. In some of these European countries, you can get a visa and just work for another company in their country. So I feel like the world is kind of caught up with this idea of just expanding your borders and your horizons, like geographically, but also like spiritually, all of it.
Well, and that's interesting too. A couple of things, a couple of points on that. I have this book, it's the Passport book. I don't have it close to me nearby, but this book, the Passport book, tells you all of the requirements for every country in the world. Some countries wanting you to at least deposit $500,000 in order to get a visa. Some countries wanting you to only have, a bank account with $2,400 in it. And so it varies in terms of where you want to live. And I know that for retirees, we got money coming in, okay? And
Yeah.
so it's not that necessary for us to have to work, but at the same time, with the skills and the knowledge that we have, I believe that as expats in other countries, we should lend some of that area of expertise into the communities of
Mm.
the countries that we happen to live in.
I would agree wholeheartedly. And in fact, part of my business isn't a nonprofit, but I always partner with local NGOs whose efforts we can help support in what ways we can. And in Nicaragua, it's I partner with CREA, which is a local education center, and they've just celebrated this week actually ushering 9 of their local Nicaraguan kids through after school programs that help increase their language skills, increase their writing skills, leadership skills, entrepreneurial skills. And they've had 9 go all the way up through to university now. So it's only like a 3-year-old program, but it's pretty impressive. Computer literacy, like how you can leverage your own skills cross culturally. These are children of farmers that now are bilingual and kind of have a fighting chance at competing economically here. As sort of the world starts to shift and change, like they have opportunities now. And so that's the one thing I've always sought out as I'm traveling or as I'm running my businesses in these countries is, what are the locals doing? How can we learn from them? And then how can we support them in the needs that they say they have?
Yeah, and that's very important because a lot of times you'll have foreign countries come into other countries for resources. These countries have all of these resources, but it's also important to give back to that country where you're taking those resources from, whether or not that's infrastructure, waste management, schooling, water treatment systems, roads, lighting, electricity, something. And so when that doesn't happen, there are people such as yourself that volunteer, or not so much volunteer, but lend their support in any way that they can. And I think that's why you have your leadership workshops and travel adventures to help people pretty much get an understanding of exactly what it is that you're doing and maybe how they can get on board, Christy.
Yeah. I mean, how they can get on board as far as leaving their home country and living somewhere else, or
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of our discussion in terms of how you did it. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that based on, your education, you were able to go to Europe. And then from Europe, whatever your connections and networking and through education or whatever, you ended up in Australia. And so there's been that network that you've established. There are people here, like I say, in the United States, whether or not you are a retiree or whether you're a young person, generation X, Y, Z, X, Y's, and Z's that are thinking about leaving the country and going other places. And you just can't sell all your stuff and move to another country. You have to have a purpose and you have to have a means. And so, you've done it. And so how have you been able to do that?
to be honest, I drive is a big thing for me, and I remember like when I stopped teaching secondary school and then I was teaching university for a while in Australia and in California for a bit. But I mean, my networks, I didn't have networks until I chose where I wanted to go. And that's where I found like my people who had done the same kind of things before me. And I feel like that is the biggest thing. If anybody takes away anything from this podcast, it's, there's there's always help. There's all, even, if you're in Tokyo, there's always someone that speaks English. You know what I mean? There's always a way to find a solution to get you where you want to be. And so I moved to Australia because I came back from the UK and I really wasn't finding my stride in the States. And I really saw opportunity, adventure. And, I didn't really have a map, but I knew my purpose wasn't found where I was. And so there's a lot of trusting yourself. There's a lot of faith and a lot of hustle, but then you ask the right questions, and there's expat forums to join, and there's communities out there to network through. And so I didn't have somebody hold my hand from one country to the other. I just went, and then I built up my network. I went to everything. I went to see gigs. I went to university after school events. I went to community volunteer activity, whatever it was. And
okay. So you immersed yourself into the culture
right.
of the country that you happen to be in.
Yeah.
In that particular community that you happen to live in. And then that was your hub. And from there, you could disperse out if you needed to make additional connections.
Yes, ma'am. That's it. But I knew I wanted to live there in Australia, just like I knew I wanted to live in England, and same in Nicaragua too. It's just a matter of, it's almost like a template. Like the most important thing is to understand what is your purpose, what lights you up, and where. And then you find that place, and there you're going to find other people who are in the place that lights them up, and that's when you start to see traction, and, things start to fall into place in ways you can't plan, or you have a plan, but it often unfolds in different ways.
Exactly. It's just a matter of getting out there, because the plan can be enhanced as you start to move through your journey. Yeah. Yep. I get it, girl. I'll drink to that.
Cheers. I know I drank the last bottle of wine over the weekend, and now I'm like, oh no, I should have.
Yeah, I had gone to the farmer's market here. On the farmer's market had this wine, okay, and it's a little bubbly. I'm surprised it has a little bubble to it, but it's delicious. It's very good. So why Nicaragua and all of the places that you could have gone to? Panama, the Philippines, Belize, Cartagena, Quito, Ecuador. How is it that you end up right there in the neck?
Well, I've been to all of those countries you just mentioned. Like, I've traveled extensively to 40 different countries, worked repeatedly through my business. My business in Australia, this is how I got to Nicaragua. My business in Australia ran leadership, education, travel programs, and we operated in Thailand, Cambodia, South Africa. That's where this necklace is from.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
Mama Tofu. One of the women, the older women there made it. Anyway.
Is it a fertility necklace?
I hope not.
Did you ask?
She would like that, the woman who made it, for sure.
Okay.
But I also worked in Costa Rica quite a bit. When Costa Rica, actually, it's just an hour and a half that way, the border. But through all of this travel, crazy travel, so family in the States, I was living in Australia. My programs were running simultaneously in all these countries, and I just needed time out, and I hadn't yet been to Nicaragua, and I knew it was a more chilled out country. Like Panama can be a bit, well, Panama's amazing. Costa Rica is too Americanized for me anymore. But I thought, I just want a little house on the beach for 6 weeks, and I didn't know anybody. I just figured I knew enough Spanish to get a chip for my phone, so I could have communication, and I knew how to get taxi. I just knew enough. I knew be okay and how to ask for more help if I needed it. So that's what I did. I stayed here for 6 weeks, and I worked, and I found an amazingly priced casita on the beach. And I didn't realize at the time was that it was amazingly priced because it was October and it was the height of the rainy season. They don't play here when it rains, like thunder and fog. Yeah, so there's nobody here. There's a few shops, they're all closed, and I was like, I didn't have a bicycle. But I remember,
Lesson learned.
No. but I do so much like research and connections with all the countries I work in that for myself, I was like, I don't even want to think. I just want to go do. And that's what happens. But I just fell in love with the country. I ended up meeting not just some really friendly, beautiful locals. Nicaraguans are some of the friendliest Central Americans, Latin Americans I've ever met. Safe here. But then also where I live, it's kind of a gravitational hub for entrepreneurial expats, right? So
Okay.
huge surf community, huge like there's volcanoes. It's a big outdoor community, but and so it draws people who want that lifestyle, but who also want to run their businesses. So my friends here are from Venezuela. They're from Italy. The Italian has a restaurant. The couple Americans here are photographers. The Venezuelans have a architecture company and they ship to Miami. Like it's amazing to me how creative and inspired people can be when they see this life they want and then they do everything to make it happen.
It's the energy.
Yes.
It's the level of energy that is a force that connects within,
Uh-huh.
that allows that same force that's connected to just explode, and the level of creativity is allowed to free form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doggone, I was gonna ask you something, and I had a chill as you were talking. Um, um, how have you been able to facilitate economic growth within the communities of the country that you visit? Like, for instance, Nicaragua.
Yeah.
I know that I have seen online where, and I have thought about this myself as a retiree, that whatever country you happen to be in, there are vendors who sell products and wares. And then there are some locals who don't get the same type of exposure that those who can afford the marketing and sales aspect of it,
Mhm.
but they're just as talented. And I've seen online different websites, that feature these types of women, straw baskets or whatever it
Mhm.
happens to
Mhm.
be. And then what happens is, from the sales, some of that money goes back into that community.
Mhm.
Have you seen that? Is that part of your program?
100%, 100%. In fact, I get really irritated when you see people just kind of marching through and not really paying attention to the country that first attracted them. But for me, like mostly with my retreats. So I run retreats still. I'm not crazy around the globe like I was. Now I'm probably because I'm a little older and I just want to come home at the end of the day. But my retreats here, they're usually about a week or 2 weeks long. And within that, um, for the retreat element, there's always local community tours where I've got, the local farmers here are amazing. And that's where we get our local produce. That's where we can, I take my visitors here out to the community and they get in the back of, you love it. There's a couple huge giant ox and they pull a cart and you climb up in the cart and then the farmers are there with their sticks and they like move along on this bumpy dirt road through these like beautiful like canyons and through rivers, and you take in the terrain and they show you their way of life and they make local cheeses with you, which you pay them for this experience. Local tortillas. There's this lovely woman, I'm not even sure how old she is, she could be 45 or 105, but
Okay.
she sits in up in a little town called El Ramate. You can only get there through by motorcycle or ox. But she makes all the pots in all the community. That she makes them out of clay, burns them, and people come to her to make for their cookware. So always are these people part of like Danya Lupe and Harold and all these lovely Nicaraguans. Like I want my people who come to see Nicaragua with me to see Nicaragua. To meet the locals that shape it, support them, learn, eat the cheese, the best tortillas. So that's one way I do facilitate the economic growth. The other way is I live here full time. They, all the anything I need, from my mechanics, or like my produce is the local farmer down the road. I always go get my pineapples and bananas from there. Like that's who I buy from, as much as I can. And, when I go home to the States to visit, that's when I'll get like, blueberries or whatever I'm missing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been there 2 years now?
8
8?
years. Yeah.
So are you still on a nomad visa or a permanent visa, permanent resident?
Yeah, I've been on a tourist visa here in Nicaragua for almost all those 8 years. But before, I was traveling a lot for my business. And so, and then obviously COVID put a huge like break on that for a while. But I am actually pursuing my residency here. It's just a matter of getting, all the paperwork's in line. But yeah, it's about time. Like I imagine I'll buy a property. Like this is home for me. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, how long does it take you to get back to the States? About 4-hour flight?
If I fly into Los Angeles, I could fly nonstop. It's about a 6-hour flight.
6, that going west. Okay. And
Mhm.
then Miami, if you were to go to Miami, about 4 hours.
2.
2.
From Managua to Miami, it's 2.5 hours. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right.
2 hours.
Is there anything you want to ask me?
Oh my goodness. Probably. Actually, I'd love to sit on the couch with you, have a glass of wine, and talk to you about how you got into this business and what's inspired you to start a podcast about how trips change your life. Because obviously, you must have had experiences where this wasn't a fun vacation, where you had this pivot of what a travel experience can do for you. What was yours?
Well, it's kind of like what you said, because trip of change for me has been around a long time. I
Mhm.
mean, I've taken lots and lots of trips, okay? And we say that it's not just physical, but it's also mental. But from a physical standpoint, as you change from one environment to another environment, there are all kinds of change, because change is constant. As long as that clock is ticking, you cannot stop change. And so various places that I've been to, I mean, the trees may be different, the sound of the birds may be different, the people may be different. And so I try to take in the different experiences that I get from being in that place, whether it's the culture, the art. I like to go to the museums and see the art, or the theater. Uh, my last trip to New York City, I got a chance to see Hamilton, and that put a whole different perspective for me on American politics, and how those were young men. They were 19 and 20 years old. They had ideas, okay? And it's kind of taken me, Christy, I say I live my life in 10-year increments. Um, and right now I'm in the last of my 60s. I'm 69. So next year I have to say that I'm 70, okay? And so there are experiences, those positive experiences that I have had in those 10 years that transition with me into the next 10 years. So now trip of change is like, I don't meet strangers. I enjoy people, and I want to get out and see what other people are doing in the world. And with all the skills and experience that I've had on this airplane, be able to help, to help other people.
Mhm.
And so, but I think, Christy, what happens, you get to be my age and you start to lose friends, from various diseases or ailments, and you have to count your blessing that you're still here, and that there's a purpose for you still being here, and just pray that the spirit will guide you in the direction in which you're supposed to go. So, with that being said, those places that I mentioned, Quito, Cartagena,
Yeah.
Panama, I've been to Costa Rica, Belize, um, Multiplan, Merida, you know. I want to see those places and see how the people live. So that's where I am. I'm retired.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a retired executive in marketing and internet services. I got skills, girl. I got skills.
I believe you.
And I'm just, just I wanted to talk to you when I read your bio because I know, I mean, I've been around the world 2 or 3 times, lived different places, but you get to a certain point and there's that level of fear.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, you're trying to pull the trigger. You just can't pull the trigger. And so talking to you has been very encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. I love it though. Honestly, I want more people to continue to travel for the right reasons and to immerse themselves. Like it's it's better than school. Like what do we learn in school? Like what they tell us we're supposed to learn, but everything I've learned that's actually been essential to my well-being, my sense of self, my relationships, I learned on the road, from other people and other cultures.
Best teacher.
Yeah, yeah, for
The
sure.
best teacher, the best teacher. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for joining me all the way from Nicaragua, y'all. From Nicaragua. Okay, am I saying it right? Am I rolling my R's?
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been super fun.
Yes, it has. And let's talk more offline about what you're doing. And let's see, maybe I can't hop on a flight and get down there and help you do something in the community.
I would love that. That would be amazing, Jackie, for sure. You just give me a shout anytime.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Yes, that's been Miss Christy Nichols, all the way from Nicaragua. I am so honored to have had her on the Triple Change podcast, the Jackie Robinson Show. I'm Jackie Robinson, and so we thank her because we know that change is constant and the clock stops for no one. So, how do you spend your time with each clock tick that you get within 24 hours? Stress and uncertainty, the economy, wars and rumors of war, death of children and famine worldwide is more than enough to wonder how much more can we take. So, how do you handle these things? We find ways to fix our minds away from the negative and volunteer and help other people. Reach out to friends. Stop reading all that negative news on the internet. There's so many ways that you can help and take a trip of change. Miss Christie just already talked about how being in other countries and being in the community and offering your services to uplift others, and how edifying and how exhilarating that is in her life. And it could be in your life and my life as well. So we thank you for joining the Triple Change podcast. And I invite you to go out to our website. You can find our information here, support our podcast, Triple Change podcast. There's our Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you want to get in touch with Miss Christie, there's her information. Venture Within, she's on Instagram. There's her website, venturewithin.com. High level leadership and life coach living in Nicaragua. That has been our show. Keep smiling and take a trip of change.